What happens when a promise is broken? When the person you fought to come home to moves on without you? Today's story is about a love pushed to its absolute limit. It's about a soldier's desperate act and the shocking chain of events it unleashes. Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of obsession, survival, and the startling nature of fate. This isn't just a story of heartbreak, it's a story of what happens after. Liam was a Marine. For 2 years, the dust of a forgotten country was his home, the thought of Chloe his only comfort. They grew up together in the misty suburbs of Portland, Oregon. Their love wasn't one of loud declarations, but of shared secrets under the sprawling branches of an old maple tree. He went to serve his country, she promised to wait, but time is a cruel adversary. Chloe, swept up by the dazzling world of Ethan Vance, son of a wealthy vineyard owner, found herself trading whispered promises for the security of a diamond ring. Liam knew nothing of this until the day he boarded a bus home. A single text message from a friend shattered his world, setting him on a collision course with a wedding he was never meant to attend. The Greyhound bus hissed through the relentless Oregon rain. Each drop that slid down the grimy window felt like a countdown. Sergeant Liam Hale, still in his dress blues, stared blankly at the screen of his phone. The words blurred into an incoherent sting of betrayal. A picture was attached. Chloe, his Chloe, smiling radiantly, a massive diamond on her finger, held by another man's hand. The caption read, "She said yes. Can't wait for the big day." The big day was today. He felt a cold dread wash over him, colder than any desert night he'd ever endured. An elderly woman in the adjacent seat glanced at him, her expression a mix of pity and concern. "Coming home, soldier?" she asked softly. "Feels more like I'm walking into a war zone," Liam muttered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He wasn't just coming home to a broken promise, he was returning to a life that had been rewritten without him, and he was still holding the pen to the original script. He remembered their last day together under the old maple, the scent of damp earth, and her vanilla perfume. "I'll wait, Liam. I swear," she had whispered, her blue eyes wide and earnest. He'd given her a small, hand-carved wooden bird, a clumsy thing he'd whittled himself. "To remind you I'm flying back," he'd said. He wondered if she still had it. Did she toss it away the day Ethan Vance entered her life, with his expensive sports car and easy charm? The bus rattled over a pothole, shaking Liam from his memories. He clenched his fists. All those nights spent staring at her photo, all the letters he wrote but couldn't always send, all the danger he faced with her face as his guiding star. It was all for nothing. The bus was pulling into the Portland station now. The city lights glittered through the rain-streaked glass, looking alien and hostile. He had a choice: go to his parents' quiet home and pretend to be fine, or go to the Vance family vineyard and face the truth. An hour later, a taxi dropped him at the ornate iron gates of the vineyard. The place was an ocean of manicured lawns and twinkling fairy lights, a world away from the grit and sand he was used to. He could hear the faint sound of string music and polite laughter, showing the guard an old invitation Chloe had sent months ago as a joke. "For my future wedding, whoever the groom may be." He walked onto the grounds. He moved like a ghost through the throngs of guests in their tailored suits and silk dresses. He grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray, downing it in one go. The bubbles did nothing to calm the storm raging inside him. Then he saw her. She was standing under a floral archway, a vision in white. She was more beautiful than he had ever remembered, and the sight of her was a physical blow. The man beside her, Ethan, was shorter, with a smug, self-satisfied smile. They were holding hands in front of a celebrant, their backs to the crowd. Liam felt the world narrow to a single point. It was just him and her, and the vast, aching chasm that now separated them. The celebrant was speaking, her voice a soft drone about love and forever, forever. The word was a mockery. He saw Chloe shiver, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor, as if she could feel his presence. She half-turned, her eyes scanning the crowd. For a moment their gazes locked. Her eyes widened, a flicker of shock, then guilt, then something unreadable, 1,000 unspoken words passed between them in that single, shattering second. Ethan followed her gaze, his smile faltering as he saw the uniformed Marine standing starkly amidst the pastel-coloured guests. He tightened his grip on Chloe's hand, a clear gesture of ownership. It was that gesture, that possessive little squeeze, that pushed Liam over the edge. The rational part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive in combat, simply shut down. He strode forward, his polished boots silent on the stone pathway. The guests parted before him like a wave, their murmurs turning to gasps. He walked right up to the stage, snatched the microphone from the stunned celebrant's hand, and turned to face Chloe. The string quartet faltered into silence. The entire wedding held its breath. Liam's voice when he spoke was rough and amplified, echoing across the vineyard. It wasn't a shout, but a raw, broken command that cut through the air. "You promised me forever," he said. Just those 4 words. They hung in the air, heavy with the weight of years of shared history. Chloe's face was pale, her lips parted in a silent, "Oh." Ethan stepped forward, his face contorted in a mask of fury. "Who the hell are you? Get out of here," he seethed. Liam ignored him. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a dark, pineapple-shaped object. A training grenade, inert and harmless, but to the terrified guests, it looked terrifyingly real. Panic erupted. A woman screamed. People scrambled backward, knocking over chairs and glasses. In the chaos, Liam's focus remained solely on Chloe. He held out his free hand to her. "Come with me. Now," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. Ethan tried to pull her back, but Chloe seemed frozen, caught between 2 worlds. Liam took another step, raising the dummy grenade slightly. "Don't make me ask again." His eyes pleaded with her, a silent message only she could understand. "Don't let this be the end of us." Terrified but also strangely compelled, Chloe pulled her hand from Ethan's grasp. She took Liam's hand. The feel of her skin against his sent an electric jolt through him. He turned and without a backward glance, led her away from the altar, through the scattering crowd, his other hand holding the grenade high. They were leaving her perfect manicured future behind and walking into a wild, uncertain darkness. They ran, past the overturned tables, past the horrified faces of her family, towards the parking lot. Liam's mind was a maelstrom of adrenaline and regret. What was he doing? He didn't have a plan. He just knew he couldn't leave her there. He found his father's old pickup truck, which he'd borrowed from the bus station, fumbling with the keys. He pushed Chloe into the passenger seat and slammed the door, jumping in behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, just as a few of Ethan's groomsmen started running towards them. He threw the truck into reverse, tires squealing on the gravel, and sped out of the vineyard's long, winding driveway. Chloe sat rigidly beside him, her white dress bunched up around her knees, her face a mask of disbelief. "Liam, what have you done?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm saving you," he said, though even to his own ears the words sounded insane. He didn't know if he was saving her from Ethan or for himself. He just drove, heading east, towards the dark, brooding shadow of Mount Hood. The rain began to fall harder, turning the winding mountain roads into slick, black ribbons. The truck's wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour. They drove in silence for what felt like an eternity, the only sounds the drumming of the rain and the truck's straining engine. Chloe had started to cry, silent tears tracking through her perfect wedding makeup. "This is kidnapping, Liam," she finally said, her voice small. "You threatened people. The police will be looking for us." He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "It's a training grenade. It's a fake." He glanced at her, at the fear in her eyes, and a wave of guilt washed over him. I just couldn't watch you marry him, Chloe. I couldn't." He saw a turn-off, a dirt, logging road disappearing into the dense Douglas fir forest, and on pure instinct he took it. He had to get off the main road. He had to think. The truck bumped and jostled over the uneven terrain, plunging them deeper into the wild, rain-soaked darkness. The forest swallowed them whole. The canopy of ancient trees blocked out what little light remained, creating a claustrophobic tunnel of green and black. Liam's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his focus absolute as he navigated the treacherous road. He felt a strange sense of calm descend upon him, the kind he only felt in moments of extreme danger. This, he understood. This was a mission. Keep moving, stay hidden. But Chloe was growing more agitated. "Where are you taking me? We have to go back. You're destroying your life," she yelled, her voice cracking. "Our life was already destroyed," he shot back, the raw pain in his voice surprising them both. Ahead, a massive fallen fir tree blocked the road, invisible in the deluge until it was too late. He slammed on the brakes, but the tyres found no purchase on the slick mud. The world became a violent, jarring cacophony of screeching metal and shattering glass. Chloe's head struck the side window, and her scream was cut short as the truck ploughed into the unmovable tree. Darkness, silence, except for the ticking of the cooling engine and the steady drumming of rain on the truck's roof. Liam's head throbbed, a constellation of stars dancing behind his eyes. He tasted blood. He turned to Chloe. She was slumped against the door, unconscious, a trickle of blood matting her blonde hair at the temple. A terrifying stillness came over him. "Chloe," he whispered, shaking her shoulder gently. "Chloe, wake up!" There was no response. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of his concussion. He had done this. He had taken her from a safe, sterile life and thrown her into violence and danger. He fumbled for the door handle, his movements clumsy. He had to get her help. He stumbled out of the truck and into the cold, unforgiving rain, his dress uniform now soaked and stained. He looked around wildly. They were lost, miles from anywhere, in the heart of a storm, and the woman he loved was hurt because of him. Jack was splitting firewood when he heard the crash. It was a sound that didn't belong here, a violent tear in the fabric of the forest symphony. He set down his axe, his weathered face creased with concern. He was a man who had sought solitude in these woods after losing everything to a wildfire years ago, and he didn't welcome intrusions. But that was the sound of trouble. He grabbed a heavy-duty flashlight and his rain slicker and headed towards the noise, his dog, a grizzled mutt named Buster, trotting at his heels. It took him 10 minutes to navigate the game trail to the old logging road. The sight that greeted him was jarring. A crumpled pickup truck, its headlights askew, steaming in the rain. A man in a military uniform was staggering away from the wreck, mumbling to himself. Jack called out, "Hey, you all right?" The soldier turned, his eyes unfocused. He looked at Jack as if seeing a ghost, then turned and blundered into the dense undergrowth, disappearing into the darkness. Jack knew a man in shock when he saw one. Chasing him into the woods in the dark was a fool's errand. The truck was the priority. He approached the wreckage cautiously, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. That's when he saw her, a woman in the passenger seat, dressed in an impossibly white wedding gown. She looked like a fallen angel, ethereal and broken. He quickly checked her pulse. It was there, faint but steady. He opened the door carefully, wincing at the screech of twisted metal. She was beautiful even with the cut on her forehead and the disarray of her hair. He knew he had to get her out of the cold. With a practiced ease born from years as a smoke jumper, he unbuckled her and gently lifted her into his arms. She was surprisingly light. Her head rested against his shoulder, and he could smell the faint scent of rain and expensive perfume. As he carried her back towards the warmth and safety of his cabin, he couldn't help but wonder what bizarre series of events had brought a bride and a soldier to this violent end on his forgotten road. Chloe awoke to the smell of wood smoke and brewing coffee. She was lying on a surprisingly comfortable bed, covered by a heavy wool blanket. The room was simple, rustic, all warm wood and soft light from a kerosene lamp. For a dizzying moment she thought she was dreaming. Then the memories came flooding back. The wedding, Liam's desperate eyes, the terrifying drive, the crash. She sat up abruptly, a sharp pain lancing through her head. A large, quiet man was sitting at a table watching her. He had kind eyes and a rugged, weathered face. "Easy there," he said, his voice a low, calming rumble. You took a nasty bump to the head. Where am I? She asked, her voice raspy. My cabin. I found you at the crash site. The crash. Liam! The man I was with. Is he okay? The man, who introduced himself as Jack, shook his head slowly. He was in shock. Wandered off into the woods before I could stop him. I went back to look for him this morning. No sign. He's gone. Chloe's heart sank. Liam was alone, concussed, and lost in the vast wilderness of Mount Hood. Meanwhile, the story of the runaway bride and the kidnapping soldier had exploded. A guest's cell phone video of Liam's speech had gone viral. News vans were camped outside the Vance vineyard. Ethan, playing the part of the distraught groom perfectly, gave a tearful interview, painting Liam as a dangerous and unstable veteran who had snapped. Ethan's father, a man with considerable influence, put pressure on the local sheriff's department. A manhunt was officially underway. They were searching for a violent kidnapper, not a heartbroken, concussed soldier. In Portland, a young paralegal named Maya scrolled through the news on her phone, her heart pounding. She remembered Liam Hale from high school. He was 2 years behind her, quiet and intense. He had once stood up for her when bullies had cornered her. She never forgot that. Seeing his face plastered all over the news, branded a criminal, she felt a surge of disbelief. This wasn't the boy she remembered. Something was terribly wrong. Liam stumbled through the woods for hours, his mind a jumble of fragmented memories. He thought he was back overseas, on a patrol gone wrong. The dripping trees became enemy combatants. The cry of a raven, a warning siren. He was running on pure, instinctual survival. Eventually he collapsed from exhaustion at the edge of a paved road, miles from the crash site. He lay in the wet ditch, shivering, as the sun began to rise. That's where Maya found him. After seeing the news, she'd had a gut feeling. She knew Liam was a good person, and she knew the area. She had driven out towards the mountains, scanning the back roads. When she saw the figure in the ditch, she knew it was him. She pulled over and rushed to his side. Liam! Liam, it's Maya. From Northwood High. He looked up at her, his eyes clouded with confusion and pain. Maya, he croaked, the name a distant echo. You have to come with me, she said, her voice firm but gentle. You're in a lot of trouble. Maya managed to get Liam into her car and back to her small apartment in the Pearl District. He was barely coherent, running a fever from exposure. She cleaned the gash on his head, gave him dry clothes and forced him to drink some water. As he drifted into an exhausted sleep on her couch, she sat and watched the news, her stomach twisting into knots. The manhunt was intensifying. They were using dogs and helicopters. The Vances were offering a huge reward for his capture. She knew that turning him in was the right thing to do, but her instinct screamed otherwise. She saw a young man who was hurting, who had made a terrible, impulsive mistake born of love and trauma. She looked at his sleeping face, the lines of stress and exhaustion. She decided in that moment that she would help him. She owed him that much. She started making calls, not to the police, but to a pro bono legal aid service for veterans she knew. Back at the cabin, Jack had made Chloe a simple breakfast of eggs and toast. She ate mechanically, her mind racing. She was a bride who had been kidnapped from her own wedding, now being cared for by a gentle stranger in the middle of the woods, while her kidnapper and childhood love was lost and being hunted. The absurdity of it was overwhelming. I need to call my mother, she said, the first practical thought she'd had. And Ethan. Jack nodded. There's no reception here. It's why I moved. But I have a satellite phone for emergencies. I think this qualifies. He retrieved the bulky phone. Chloe's hands trembled as she dialed her mother's number. The conversation was a blur of tears and panicked reassurances. Her mother was frantic. The police were at their house. Chloe tried to explain that Liam wasn't violent, that he was just broken, but the words felt hollow. How could she explain the complexity of their history in a single static-filled phone call? Her next call was to Ethan. His reaction was not what she expected. There was no relief in his voice, only cold fury. Where are you, Chloe? Who is this man? The police are tracking this call right now. Ethan, listen to me, she pleaded. Liam is not a monster. He's hurt. He's lost. I don't care about him. Ethan's voice was sharp, cutting. I care about the humiliation he's caused me. My family. Our wedding was ruined. Broadcast all over the internet. You made a fool of me by taking his hand. In that moment, Chloe saw him clearly for the first time. She wasn't a person to him. She was a possession that had been stolen, an investment that had been tarnished. His concern wasn't for her safety, but for his reputation. The beautiful, secure future he offered suddenly felt like a gilded cage. I'm sorry, Ethan, she said, her voice quiet but firm, but I don't think I can marry you. She ended the call before he could reply, a strange sense of liberation washing over her. Over the next 2 days, an unusual peace settled in the cabin. Away from the noise of her life, Chloe began to heal. Jack was a quiet, steady presence. He never pushed her to talk, but he was always there to listen. He told her about his life, about the wife and daughter he had lost in a house fire, and how the forest had become his sanctuary. Chloe found herself opening up in return, telling him about the pressure she felt, the confusion in her heart, and the deep, tangled history she shared with Liam. She helped him chop wood, cook meals, and tend to his small garden. In the simplicity of these tasks, she found a clarity she hadn't felt in years. She realized she had been drifting, allowing others to chart the course of her life. Here, in this rustic cabin, she was finally finding her own compass. The polished, perfect woman from the wedding was fading, replaced by someone stronger, someone more real. In Portland, Liam was slowly recovering under Maya's care. The concussion was fading, but the weight of his actions was crashing down on him. I could have killed her, he whispered one evening, his head in his hands. I'm a monster. No, you're not, Maya said, sitting beside him. You're a soldier with scars nobody can see. You acted out of love, not malice. It was reckless, yes, but not monstrous. She had been working tirelessly. The Veterans Legal Aid had assigned a lawyer, a sharp woman, who believed Liam's PTSD was a major mitigating factor. Their first goal was to find Chloe and prove she was safe and unharmed. We need to find out where the crash was, Maya said, pulling out a map of the national forest. Can you remember anything about the road you took? Liam closed his eyes, forcing his scrambled memory to work. He remembered the turn-off, the feel of the muddy road, the towering trees. Together, they started piecing together the puzzle of where he had left Chloe. Using Liam's fragmented memories and her knowledge of the forest back roads, Maya pinpointed a probable area. The next morning they drove out, Maya's small sedan, struggling on the gravel roads. They found the abandoned logging track, and after a few tense miles, the wreckage of the pickup truck. It was cordoned off with police tape, but there was something else, a faint trail leading away from the truck, marked by a few broken branches and a single muddy footprint that was too large to be Liam's. Someone else was here, Maya breathed. Someone found you. Hope surged in Liam's chest. Chloe might be safe. Following the trail, they eventually came upon a small, secluded cabin, a thin wisp of smoke curling from its stone chimney. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew he had to face it. He walked up to the door and knocked, his hand trembling slightly. The door opened, and the large man with a calm, steady gaze looked out at them. It was Jack. Before Liam could speak, Chloe appeared behind him. She was wearing a simple flannel shirt and jeans, her hair tied back, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She looked more beautiful and more alive than he had ever seen her. The relief that flooded through Liam was so powerful, it almost brought him to his knees. Chloe, he breathed. The reunion was awkward, heavy with unspoken emotions. Chloe assured him she was fine. Jack, seeing the genuine remorse in Liam's eyes, remained a quiet observer. Maya explained the legal situation, her voice calm and professional. Chloe, what happens next is up to you, she said. If you press charges, Liam will go to prison for a very long time. If you tell the police you went with him willingly, even if it was under duress at first, we have a chance. Chloe looked from Liam's desperate face to Jack's quiet strength, and she knew what she had to do. Chloe refused to press charges. She released a video statement, recorded on Maya's phone, explaining that the event was a massive, regrettable misunderstanding between old friends. She stated that Liam was suffering from the stresses of his service and that she was never in any real danger. The video went viral, completely changing the public narrative. The Vances were livid, but without their star witness, the district attorney's case crumbled. The kidnapping charges were dropped, though Liam still had to face lesser charges and agree to mandatory therapy and community service. It was a better outcome than anyone had dared to hope for. In the aftermath, the lives of everyone involved were irrevocably altered. The web of their relationships had been torn apart and rewoven into a new, unexpected pattern. The impulsive act at the wedding had served as a violent, chaotic catalyst for change. Chloe never returned to her old life. The thought of marrying Ethan now seemed like a fantasy from another person's story. She and Jack had found a rare, quiet connection in the heart of the forest. She fell in love, not with a grand gesture, but with the steady rhythm of his kindness and the shared solace they found in nature. She stayed with him, learning the ways of the woods, finding a strength and independence she never knew she possessed. Her mother was initially horrified, but eventually came to see that her daughter had never been happier or more herself. The gilded cage had been broken open, and Chloe was finally free to fly. She and Jack built a life together, simple and profound, far from the twinkling lights and empty promises of the city. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale, but something far more real and enduring. Liam, with Maya's unwavering support, began the hard work of healing. His therapy sessions forced him to confront the trauma he had buried for so long. He started to understand that his desperate act wasn't just about losing Chloe. It was a cry for help from a man who had seen too much. As he worked on himself, he began to see Maya not just as a helpful friend, but as the intelligent, compassionate, and fiercely loyal woman she was. He realized the love he felt for Chloe was a love for the boy he used to be. His love for Maya was for the man he was becoming. A new, more mature love began to grow between them, built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared recovery. He enrolled in college, deciding to study forestry, a path where he could find peace and purpose. And what of Ethan and Jessica, Chloe's maid of honour? In a twist no one saw coming, they found a strange comfort in each other after the wedding debacle. Bonded by their shared sense of betrayal, their friendship deepened into something more. Jessica admitted she had always been secretly drawn to Ethan's confidence, and Ethan found that beneath Jessica's bubbly exterior was a surprising strength. Months later, they stunned their social circle by announcing they were together, and that Jessica was pregnant. Theirs was a complicated beginning, born from the ashes of a different relationship, but they were determined to build a future. The Vance family, desperate for an heir and a way to smooth over the scandal, gave the union their reluctant blessing. The grand wedding they had planned for Chloe was repurposed for Jessica, a quieter, more subdued affair. A year later, the snow fell softly on Jack's cabin. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth. Chloe looked out the window, watching the flakes drift down, a peaceful smile on her face. Jack came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the world turn white. In the city, Liam and Maya walked hand in hand through a park, their breath misting in the cold air. They were laughing, their faces bright with the future that was finally their own. And in a lavish modern house in the hills, Ethan rocked a baby in his arms while Jessica watched, a tired but content smile on her face. They were a family, forged in the most unexpected of fires. Each of them had been set on a new path, a new trajectory they never could have imagined. The storm that Liam started that day had been destructive, yes. It had torn down old structures and left chaos in its wake. But sometimes, a forest fire is necessary for new growth. It clears away the underbrush, allowing new life to reach for the sun. The lives they were all living now were truer, more authentic than the ones they had planned. They had been forced to confront their deepest fears and desires, and in doing so, had found their real selves. Chloe found her freedom in the wild. Liam found his peace in healing. Ethan and Jessica found an unexpected family. It was a messy, complicated, and beautifully imperfect resolution. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes the most catastrophic moments of our lives are not endings, but violent, necessary beginnings. The wooden bird Liam had carved for Chloe so long ago sat on the mantelpiece of the cabin. She had found it in a box of old keepsakes while clearing out her room at her mother's house. It wasn't a symbol of a love she had lost, but a reminder of the journey that had brought her here. It represented a boy's promise, a promise that had been broken, and then, in the strangest way imaginable, fulfilled. He had promised he would fly back to her, and in a way, he had. He had flown back and, with his desperate, crazy act of love, had set her free. She was no longer waiting for someone to return. She was home. She picked up the small bird, its wood worn smooth with time, and held it in her palm, grateful for the storm that had led her to this quiet, sunlit clearing. In the end, this wasn't just one love story, but four. Each person was broken in some way, and each found their own path to being whole again. A single moment of desperation at a wedding became the turning point that redefined all of their futures. It proves that our lives can change in an instant, and that the path we think we're on is not always the one we're meant to travel. The greatest tragedies can sometimes lead to the most profound discoveries about ourselves and what we truly need. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more cinematic stories, and share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And now, I have a question for you. Do you believe a single reckless act born from love can ever truly be forgiven? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.